Oh, guys, good, you're here. I am so excited. Guess what? I hope this isn't about your podcast again. Why, did you finally listen to it?
Da-da-da-da, 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 the Groomer Next Door production. You're listening to BYOTP Radio. Coming up next, the Groomer Next Door. The Groomer Next Door Podcast.
Dun, 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 dun. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm everybody's friend.
Hello, Pups and Kittens, and welcome to another fun-filled episode of the Groomer Next Door. I'm your host, Chris Green, and joining us this week is Chelsea Kent. I'm not even going to waste your time by listing off the numerous amounts of accolades. We're going to just dive into having her on the podcast because just listening to her alone, you'll find out how brilliant she is. But before we do that, let's go into the fact of the week. Spaying or neutering your dog before the age of 6 months can help prevent cancer in your pup. It's very, very, very important to spay and neuter your pups and your kitties as well. It's just health-wise and furniture-wise also is very helpful. There's a laundry list of reasons why we want to actually advocate for spay and neutering. Health-wise should be the number one, and then our personal property can, fall down there as time goes on. By that sound, Chelsea is about to make her way into the podcast studio. So, with that said, please welcome Chelsea Kent to the podcast.
Oh, hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
This week on the podcast, we are joined by an absolute, just amazing lady. Her name is Chelsea Kent, and we were actually notified of you by Billy Hookman. He was when he was like, you need to talk to her. She's amazing. So thank you for making the time, even though I completely blundered this entire interview and the whole process behind it. I apologize. So thank you for being on.
Well, thank you. I openly will always say when I mess up, and I don't really mind, because it's one of those things, I mess up quite a lot. This one was completely the first in my ever time to mix up interviews, so thank you for being so understanding, and just be like, no, you can call me later, and I was like, oh, thank God she doesn't hate me, so thank you.
Absolutely, no problem.
So, tell us your origin story. Now, what's funny is that we're the same age, and I still always think to myself as somebody who's out there doing a lot, and you surpassed me 100 times, and I'm going, well, now I don't feel like I actually do as much. So, and which made me feel good though too, because I was like, yes, there's somebody who's doing more. Yay! So let's go into that origin story because it was just so amazing when I read about it.
Yeah. So I've been in the pet food industry for almost 17 years. I started out working at a holistic pet supply store in Conifer, Colorado. And I also help a store that is up in Greeley with managing. I help a store in Golden Open. I was a distributor rep for a holistic distribution company in the state of Colorado. So for a couple of years, it was my job to go around and educate the store owners all around the state of what was going on in the industry with the more holistic products. And I almost bought a store in Arvada. And then when I was 25, I got denied a bank loan, of course, because I was 25. And I called my mom, and she said she'd call me back, and she did. And she actually agreed to take money out of her retirement, which ideally ended up working out great because it was right before the economy crashed, so the money that she took out to fund the store opening ended up being saved by being invested in something where a lot of other people were actually losing that same amount of money that she took out. So we opened up Heroes Pets in Littleton, Colorado in 2007. It was 2 months before the economy crashed, but it just happened to be right after the melamine recall. So we actually rode that out very well and just got a huge opportunity to do a lot of consumer education about products, and we didn't really have any hiccups there. And then through time, I have gotten myself into a lot more things, and so now I have the Food Regulation Sacks Alliance, which is a consumer and independent small manufacturer and retail business owner alliance that really focuses on education and activism on the regulatory side of the industry. I am responsible for supplying risk assessment statistics regarding different categories of pet food to the FDA. And I have been working with the Colorado Department of Agriculture on a legislatively driven stakeholder panel regarding the use of hemp in pet and agricultural feed. Hopefully that's something that gets moved nationwide. What did I miss?
Yeah, you know what? It's so much. I'm like, oh my gosh. Now, you know what? I want to actually touch on the whole theory of adding hemp. I've done some different studies on this, and the benefits are just ridiculous. Health benefits for dogs and cats. Yep. And yet, here's something that I find very strange. If you are in a state, and you are, that it's legal, you still have to actually get a prescription. It's not going to make the dog or cat high. Catnip will make your cat high. That's over the counter. Hemp will not. And yet, it has been proven to help with mobility and so many different things. And I don't understand why it's not being pushed harder. It's in a very small, maybe 2, 3 at most states. They're going, hey, this actually works. Here's the science. Nope, it's marijuana. No, it's completely lost here. So you're an expert on this, then much more than me. How did that all start? How did that research start? And if you're anything like me, did you just completely get submersed in it and keep reading and reading and reading and going, hey, this works here, why are we not doing it?
Yeah, definitely. The Colorado Department of Agriculture is really gung-ho about actually getting it passed into other states. Good. And you don't have to have a prescription in Colorado if you're not doing something that's below, however I worded that, 0.3% THC or less. So if it's a small amount of THC, then you don't need a prescription. If it's a larger amount, then you do, and you can only buy that in dispensaries. So the committee that I've been working with is actually a lot of people, everything from lawyers to growers to people in the agriculture industry. And so there's a lot of great minds put together on that, along with the regulators, obviously. And I think ultimately it comes down to not as much a lack of science as everybody says that there is. There is a lack of American science, but Europe actually has a lot of scientific research studies out about hemp. But I think ultimately there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding about it because there's so many things that people just are unclear on. Like, for example, hemp and marijuana, people think that they are a different plant, and they're not. It is actually the same plant. The difference is a lot like dog breeds, though. Like, you can have a Great Dane and you can have a Cocker Spaniel. They're both dogs, but they're very different. So hemp is just the marijuana plant bred to have high CBD, low THC. And marijuana is bred to have high THC, low CBD. And a lot of people, I think, are worried about the regulations because the hemp products are so heavily regulated and on a federal level, they're technically not legal. I think that people really have concerns about the manufacturing and whether or not you're getting the product that you think that you're getting. But the companies that are manufacturing the hemp products, for the sake of staying in business and not going to federal prison, they're super strict about what they're actually providing. So you aren't allowed to have a plant that actually grew at a higher level than 0.3 THC. If you happen to harvest at a higher level, you by law have to burn it. So I think that there's a lot of confusion about that. Another issue, sadly, is the pharmaceutical industry. And there's a synthetic form of THC that's been manufactured. You can't patent a plant because nature made it. So the synthetic versions of those are things that the pharmaceutical companies can actually patent and make more money on. And there have been a lot of really bad side effects to those products. And those get lumped in with natural THC, which doesn't have side effects until the point at which the scientific studies show that there's a potential for side effects is basically once you or an animal consume in excess of 4 times your body weight. So It's not possible. And there are also a lot of other factors that people have concerns about. Like typically when you're looking at something that you're concerned about the substance being given out into homes, then you're worried about like what's the exposure to children or older people. And scientific studies actually show that children would have to eat about 10 times the amount that an adult would to get to the point of toxicity. That's the same thing with puppies and kittens. The reason for that is because cannabinoids, found obviously in cannabis, they work with your internal, it's called your endocannabinoid system. So your endocannabinoid system is actually designed, and like already there, obviously, it's designed to just go around and fix things. So if you're not consuming something that has cannabinoids in it, your body actually manufactures the chemical constituents to create cannabinoids to go around and heal things. And that's why it's like the miracle drug, because your body is designed to utilize those all over. It's just the fixing system. So in puppies, kittens, children, that system isn't developed yet, so they don't have a sensitivity to it because they don't have enough receptors. So in the ASCO meetings, they tend to get really riled up about it and make claims that aren't really logical. Like the last ASCO meeting that I was in, there was a veterinarian that was saying that if hemp is allowed to be used in pet and agricultural feed, that it's going to increase the incidence of toxicity in pets in the home, which doesn't make sense because just because you have hemp in a food doesn't mean you have, marijuana in the house. And also, they're not considering comparisons like garlic as an example. Garlic is allowed to be put into foods, and garlic for a dog is toxic at 4 teaspoons a day per 25 pounds versus for a 10-pound dog, you'd have to get to 4.4 pounds a day of marijuana for them to have a toxicity. So it's just a lot of misinformation and assumption, I think.
Wow. You know what? You're a lot more aware of this whole topic than I am. I remember having a conversation with Vet CBD early in the year, and I did my research, but nothing that extravagant. That is amazing. I should have just contacted you.
It's the rabbit hole of topics.
Yeah, and there's so many in this industry, but the science behind this it works. But again, I still think there's a very big misconception when it comes to Americans and marijuana. We're okay, though, as a nation with cigarettes. Even though we know all that we know about it, we're okay with it. But we're still against marijuana, which is an organic, holistic cigarette, which has, again, properties that are healthy. Now, I'm not advocating go out and smoke pot, but I do see a lot of benefits in hemp. And the treatment, it's there. But for some reason, we're so close-minded, we just will not have that. And when you mention AFCO, we'll get into them later, they're against everything unless they're probably taking money from it, or they call it themselves. Ooh, look, let me trademark this myself. Because that's them.
I think that one thing that people as a whole really need to consider is trying to create a distinction between what actually makes sense versus what they were just raised to believe. And there's been this huge war on drugs for decades. So I think that there's this, stigma towards anything that was pointed out in that war on drugs. But then you also have to consider the comparison of, take kibble, for example. We've all been told that kibble is the safest thing to feed your dog. It's complete and balanced. You never have to give anything else. That's all they need in their whole life. But the reality is, if anybody took their child, say their 4-year-old, to a pediatrician, and the pediatrician said, you need to give your child nothing but total cereal until they're 18 years old. It's complete and balanced. It's scientifically tested. If you give anything else, you're probably going to make them sick. They'll get diarrhea. Just do this and they're good to go. You would go to a different pediatrician. So just because you were raised with a belief of something, now you can question those things, and that's the same category where hemp products fall. It's just something that needs to be reevaluated.
I cannot disagree with any of that. The only thing I would say is, being parents, we both can see this from one perspective, and that is, if we were feeding our kids fast food every day, and we went to the pediatrician would look at our child and go, got an onset of obesity here, what are you feeding your child? Oh, we go to, this fast food place every day. And what is the pediatrician going to tell you? Cut out the fatty foods. But we're okay with what's going on with the drug manufacturers, or better known as Big Kibble, with their fast food-like product with chemicals and all these harmful ingredients. But there are veterinarians out there who are going, yes, feed it. This is good for your dog. Huh? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's shocking. I mean, you know this as much as I do. Veterinarians are pushing dry kibble. And there's oh yes, go with this brand. It's good. How did you get a vacation by them? What did you get to actually say this? It's a commercial ad. I never have understood it, except for, I'm getting a free trip out of it, or I'm getting money from it, so why not promote it?
And if you ask any veterinarian what education that they did get on nutrition in college, they'll tell you it's anywhere from 2 to 8 hours, and it was taught by Science Diet or Royal Canin, and that's the way it's been for decades, because the Mark Morris Institute was created specifically for that, for educating veterinarians. Mark Morris is the original owner of Science Diet. So I think in a lot of cases they're not trying to give you bad information. It's just not what they're educated in. But people don't view their veterinarians that way. Vets are trained in diagnostics, pharmaceuticals, surgeries, and only in nutrition if they take the extra time out of their already obviously very busy lives to educate themselves further, which a lot of them, I don't think, really have a passion for that. The other aspect of that is to consider that a veterinarian goes to college for the same amount of time as a human doctor. Mm-hmm. But veterinarians are covering a lot of species, and doctors are only covering one. So it's diluting the amount of education that they can also have on any one of those species. So that also further eliminates the time available for really addressing nutrition.
Very well said. You know, I asked a brand new veterinarian, what was it like? What's everything like now? Do you actually, on your textbooks, are they health science? She goes, no, we didn't have textbooks. It's mostly lectures now. So they're starting to break away, but, here we go. Majority of your veterinarians, they unfortunately went through that process, and a lot of them have realized, oh, wait, this is wrong. So we're going to actually, adjust and rely on the science. What got them there to start with? And then there's the other ones who are just out for a fast dollar, and I think it's really easy to find those veterinarians because they're probably a dime a dozen. But you're going to find them, and I always say, a veterinarian is just like a boarding facility for your pets. Same thing as a groomer. There's a ton of them out there, but there are good ones, and then there's the rest. And that's the hardest thing to actually pick out. So
yeah, and sometimes it's unfortunate how science can be perceived. Like in so many instances, it's just a matter of perspective. So as an example, the very first page of the Hill's Science Diet, basically product guide that's provided to veterinarians and vet techs, the first page actually says that one of the reasons that you as a vet or vet tech should recommend Science Diet is because you'll have your customers coming back all the time. So you can say, well, that sounds great for business, but like on a scientific level, like they can say that's super accurate because if you're making them sick, then they're going to be back all the time, but they might not perceive it as that's what the intention was something so unethical at the time that they were writing it. And then another thing, like corn is actually something that veterinarians all the time, they're like, corn has, a lot of amino acids, it's high in protein, all of these benefits. And scientifically speaking, that's accurate. It definitely is accurate. The problem is that what doesn't get addressed is if the corn is genetically modified. The reason that they did that is so that it could tolerate higher levels of chemicals that would otherwise kill it. And then also considering where are they getting that corn? So in the pet food industry, that corn has already been transferred from the corn milling industry into the biodiesel industry. It was actually soaked with toxic chemicals and then stripped of all of its nutrients to use to make ethanol. And then the byproducts of ethanol manufacturing get sold back into the pet food industry. So if you're stripping something of all of its nutrients, then obviously scientifically, it's not going to have the same benefits of the original product that you're referencing the benefits of. Not to mention that, if you're really looking at the breakdowns of things, like corn gluten meal, it's one of the primary ingredients used in prescription pet foods, and what they don't tell the veterinarians, corn gluten meal is actually legally classified as a toxic chemical substance and regulated by the FDA under the 1990 Toxic Chemical Substances Act, because one of the chemicals that they use to create corn gluten meal is used for making petri dishes. Wow. And it's completely toxic. It's literally not even the same industry as a corn mill.
Wow. But what is in regular big dry kibble that's actually good, except for the bag? Maybe the bag would be the only thing that's actually edible, at least for the most part.
I think that there are some brands that are trying to make better quality products, but they are few and far between. And when it comes to kibble, the majority of the time they're literally either purchasing trash from other industries or they're being paid as a trash service. Mm-hmm. So companies like Purina, as an example, they're capable of selling you a 50-pound bag for $20 because they already got paid to go and buy their ingredients from somebody that didn't want it anymore. And it's pretty sketchy. So like, say for example, they're going to a rendering plant and they're going to pick up beef byproduct. So beef byproduct, you would think, are the cuts of beef that humans don't want to eat, like the neck and, maybe some of the organs and things like that. But the reality is those are actually still pretty valuable and they're a lot more profitable. So those aren't the same thing that are used. So I even have pictures of this. If they have a 5-gallon bucket that says beef byproduct, then it could have everything from cancerous tumors to plastic bags to anything they scooped up off the floor when they were sweeping to chewing tobacco from the people that are working there after they come in after lunch. They toss it in the bucket. All of those things are actually considered to be beef byproduct because they were put in the beef byproduct bucket. So you really don't know.
It's terrible. It's just, it's completely beyond. But we all know that all the show dogs are fed Purina because, why else would they not? They have to be. The dog show is named after Purina, so you know that all those show dogs eat Purina, right? No.
Right. And how could a company possibly be profitable enough to pay for all of that?
Right?
If they were using real quality ingredients. Consider if you made 50 pounds worth of dog food and you bought the cheapest stuff that you could find at the grocery store, how much would it cost you?
It would still cost me.
It's not going to cost you $20. No. It's going to cost you a couple $100.
Yes. As a raw feeder, I know exactly. It's about $70 a week just for my dog. And there's just no way around it. You want to make sure it's containing all of the right ingredients. And people go, but I have a 40-pound or 50-pound bag for $30. I don't know, and it lasts me 2 weeks. I don't know how to actually do that. Oh, trust me, you can do it. Let's take it away from your food, who always, in any grocery store, and I know you see this too, because it drives me absolutely insane. It's going to put me in a rubber room, I think, where you see all the name brand products, and their basket is filled with great stuff, including fresh meats and vegetables, and then that old Roy right there, that big old bag saying, I am death in the basket, and you know that their dog is just going to look and feel like garbage, and it drives me nuts. You want to just have that.
I always try to tell people, if you absolutely can't afford to do exclusively raw, then dehydrated tends to be less expensive. And just like you, if you were eating primarily Fruit Loops as a diet, you would be doing well to upgrade to Cascadian Farm cereal, but you would be doing even better to incorporate at least some fruits and vegetables into your diet. So even if you can't feed exclusively raw or dehydrated, you can still mix and you can still get some benefit from other things. So I didn't really intend to name drop any brands, but the Horizon brand of dry food, I think, is a good quality dry food that's still inexpensive. So for people that have a really tight budget, I'll say feed the Horizon because it's a lower price point, and then you have room in your budget to put in, a number of dehydrated or raw foods, and then at least you're getting some whole food nutrition, and even that's still going to help the body to detox, and they're less likely to get sick and develop diseases and things like that.
It's funny because I thought Fruit Loops were good because it has the word fruit in it.
Right?
How else could it be? We've all ate that as a kid. So wait, are you telling me there's no fruit in Fruit Loops?
No, you should definitely eat exclusively Fruit Loops forever and nothing else.
I will do that. You know what? Because you told me to, I will. And I will do that happily. Mm-hmm. Of course, I probably would anyway. I'm a very large child. That's all I really am. So, the one thing that always really pushed everything when I'm doing my research on you was just your drive for holistic. You've always been really into the holistic. How did that start?
Well, the irony of that is that I'm a really skeptical person, and that all of the regulatory sectors of the industry that are against holistic are the ones that have ultimately convinced me to be so holistic-minded. And basically, just in not ever really settling for what I've been told, I guess every time that I'm told something, then I try to figure out, like, what level of truth am I getting out of this claim? And I dig pretty deep to find those things, and in a lot of cases it comes down to looking at the regulations and looking at manufacturing guidelines and standards and things like that, and then maybe looking at recall histories and looking at CDC regulated outbreaks and just all of the different aspects of truth from the sources that I think are the most reputable. Like, who's in charge of monitoring recalls and publishing them? The FDA. So look on the FDA website for that information as an example. And ultimately what it comes down to is that over the years, I've just realized that the published information from the FDA and the CDC saying that people shouldn't be feeding raw foods completely contradicts their own publications. So, as ironic as it is, I have really developed a commitment towards holistic products as a result of reading all of the legal paperwork that there is that you can find.
You were always like this. Throughout even being a kid, you were like this, weren't you?
Probably.
Probably. I'm guessing so. I'm thinking when people told you different little fairy tales, you're like, yeah, let's go research that. I don't believe you. I could just see an 8-year-old Chelsea going, nope, I don't believe you. And it just kind of grew. Yeah, I can see it. Of course, I can honestly say as a kid and unfortunately became the same as an adult, I'm the same way. I've always kind of followed my own path, and if somebody told me something, I'm like, yeah, okay. And this is a time before Google. Can you imagine how bad we would have been as kids if we had Google?
Oh my gosh, right?
Oh my God. I look at, and we both have kids that are roughly the same age, and I look at the advances that they have. And I understand that now we're sounding like the old people going back when I was a kid, but I'm looking at going, you have tablets, you have cell phones. I mean, yes, my daughter has a cell phone at 9, and I'm an insane father, but I want to make sure she's connected. But I'm like, you're watching YouTube all the time. Or you can watch Netflix. I would have died for that kind of power when I was at your age. Or researching. And it's like, oh, God, they're so lucky. Now you can research. Encyclopedia Britannica was the big thing. I mean, have you ever watched Double Dare since becoming an adult?
No.
Oh, God, you need to watch it. If you watch the old Nickelodeon show Double Dare, which was great when we were kids, their version of Google was Encyclopedia, and they would give them out. And I remember watching that show going, that would be kind of cool. Now, of course, we have one. It's called our cell phone, and we can pull all of our data right there. It takes no time. And yet, the part that really drives me insane, people are still clueless. Probably more now than they were before. Kind of hard to believe.
I definitely have, props to people that make an effort, but I feel really bad for people. Like, every single day I have people that are like, I've been doing research, and honestly, at this point, I'm just confused. There's so much information, and a lot of it doesn't really match with what other people recommend, and where do I go to find good information? So it's awesome that it's available, but it can also be very overwhelming and confusing.
On a daily basis, I'm asked nutritional questions. And I'm sure you probably get a lot more than I do. But the one that drives me nuts, and it's the same thing always, my dog has dandruff. No, it's flaky skin. Okay. And then it always follows up with, well, what are you feeding your dog? And of course, you already know what brand I'm going to say. And it's like, well, there it is. There's your problem. No, that can't be it. Yes, it is. No. Yes, that's the problem. It always starts with nutrition. everything starts with nutrition. And with a dog and cat, the more holistic you are, the more to their biological, appropriate, raw feeding environment is right there. And yet, people are like, ew, I would never feed that to my dog. Well, this is how it's supposed to be. And then I'm not entirely into that whole, you feed your dog like a wolf type thing, but there's the science. Well, there's too much science. I can't follow it. It's just this, it's a, come on, here we go back to the whole Google thing. It's right there. It's so easy. And it drives me nuts. I mean, I don't know how our parents ever was able to do anything because they had to actually work to find the information. Now, it's just so easy.
And as a parent, you have to actually remember it long enough to go look it up. That's even harder.
What?
I would like to add, it's so much more valuable for your pets, too, because, with you, if you go and have fast food, then it's obviously not good for you, but you just had it, once or a few times in a week or whatever. That's not the only thing that you're eating. Whereas with pets, that tends to be the only thing that you're feeding. So any level of contaminant that's in a product, that's 100-fold for them because they never get a break from it. Right. Any level of allergen, any level of anti-nutrient that causes leaky gut or pancreatitis. If they never have a break from it ever, then they're more likely to develop a problem sooner.
And
plus they have smaller bodies.
Right. And their time on the earth is so short as it is. Mm-hmm. Why are we making it even shorter? Shocks me.
And one thing with that that's always interesting to me is I'll have people almost every day that are like, yeah, my cat's getting old. They're 14 years old. It's a good long life. People don't realize cats can live to be 30.
Yeah.
So 14 is not a long life. Dogs, in Europe, Great Danes, they average a lifespan of 14. In the United States, they average 7.
Yes.
So it's relative what you believe a long life to be. They can live so much longer than what American standards are for their lifespan.
But if you actually, and I know you've looked into this, when you look at Europe and how they feed, and you look at how we feed, they are very much into the biologically appropriate feeding. We're kind of thinking about it, I guess you could say. It's something that we've heard of, through the grapevine. Yeah. But it's such a strange concept. It's like, here's all the facts. And yet, I mean, I've even noticed it by doing this. The more I talk about this, the more people want to just put their fingers in their ears and go, la, 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 la. It's like, this is really happening. But I don't know when that change will happen. I don't know when they're going to, when everybody will wake up to say, oh yeah, you know what, this is a problem. It's big tobacco and fast food merging together to make big pet food. That's what it's all come down to. Harmful chemicals.
Some of the issues that are existent right now that really create that market in the United States are ultimately we aren't utilizing technology that's available. So in Europe, there are a lot of places that use alternative fuel sources, and they'll take trash and they'll turn it into fuel. In the United States, we don't really do that. I guess that we just feel like we're plentiful enough. So as a result of that, and us not having that outlet of a place to put our trash, in the United States, we actually have 15.12 million tons of product every year that goes into pet and agricultural feed because landfills won't accept it. Right. It's that toxic that it actually will not ever be allowed into a landfill. And the FDA has brought that up before as something that they would like to figure out a way to resolve, but the cost of figuring out something else to do with that is pretty excessive, and they don't know where they would get the money for it. So it's like if we found these new technologies, then there would be an alternative for using it in pet products. But in the meantime, they're like, just don't tell anybody that we're using that. technically it's illegal, but we're not actually going to regulate it because we don't know what else to do with it.
Right. That's what really catches me, because I really don't know who's the real problem. I don't know if it's AFCO. I don't know if it's the FDA. I don't know if it's the Department of Agriculture. Because I know AFCO members are all Department of Agriculture, so that's kind of like, that goes into one. FDA turns a blind eye to all of this, and yet they're the ones who are supposed to be protecting us. The Food and Drug Administration should be able to do something to help, but for some reason I feel like, I don't know who's the worst one out of all of them. There's just no trust.
I actually think that the USDA is probably the worst one at the moment, just because they have absolutely no interest whatsoever in the pet industry. And any company that has a product that says that it's USDA inspected, that's because they're purchasing it from some other place that already had it inspected. It wasn't inspected for their use. And any company that wants to have a USDA inspector at their pet food facility basically can't. It's cost prohibitive for them to do it. It's not a reality for a company to even really have that option. The USDA also doesn't have any presence at the AFCO meetings where the FDA and the Departments of Agriculture do. And what's really important to realize with that is that the FDA is responsible for the regulation of food products, not including meat, poultry, and some eggs. So dog and cat foods, all of them have at least one of those ingredients, if not all of them. And so all of that really should defer over to the USDA, but they're like, no, we don't want to have anything to do with that. And there's a huge disconnect, obviously, in the value of inspection when the FDA literally doesn't even have the legal authority to enforce a recall unless a person gets sick from the product. Outside of that, the FDA can literally call Purina and say, we've gotten 200 complaints today about your product. We think you should recall. And they can't legally enforce them to recall if a person wasn't sick, and Purina can just say, no thanks, click.
And I'm sure that they do.
I'm sure they do. That's why they don't have more recalls, despite, if you look on Consumer Affairs, there's inarguable hundreds of thousands of deaths caused by their products. So if the USDA were actually willing to have more involvement, I think that it could be a more cohesive system when it comes to inspection and regulation. That doesn't mean it would be problem-free, but at least a lot of the gaps wouldn't be deferred to somebody that doesn't actually have the authority to do anything about it.
You just made my life a lot worse. Just pointing this out. I was already on the I hate AFCO, I hate PFI, I hate the FDA, I hate Department of Ag. Now you're going to throw USDA in that for me? Great. Something else for me to complain about.
But on the other side of that, that's a huge part of what I do in my Food Regulation Fact Alliance, is getting people into the understanding of where they can contribute, where they can be an activist. And being activists and actually getting the USDA involved in the regulation of something that always uses USDA-regulated products, and get involved in finding alternative energy companies that are willing to look into utilizing the trash that we have that is currently being used in our pets' food and the food for the animals that we eat. Like, we're consuming this toxic trash. So if more people were activists and getting involved in, lighting a fire under some butts, I think that we would all be in a better place.
But that requires work. That requires effort. We're in a very lazy time in our whole existence. It almost kind of has that feeling, oh my gosh, and I'm drawing a blank. I'm drawing a blank on the movie. Disney movie, Pixar, it was the robot, and I'm drawing a blank.
Wall-E?
Thank you, Wall-E.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. Just think we're up in a little spaceship because Earth has completely, been destroyed, and we're all just going to become the little obese people up in little scooter things. That's kind of what I really see happening. Now, I wanted to actually go on to something you just mentioned, and we had been talking about, but you're the founder of the Food Legislative Facts Alliance. How did that start?
Food Regulation Facts Alliance.
Did I not say that? I'm reading it in front of me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm reading it in front of me, and I'm still messing it up.
It's okay.
So, how did that start? I mean, obviously, you're always looking for answers, and you're always, involved in things. But how do you actually start something like this, and how does it kind of grow?
Yeah. So there's a small group of holistic-minded people that attend the AFCO events. Really small. Like, 5, 6, 7, kind of depending on which meeting. So everybody there, they all kind of have their own specialty and their reason why they're there. There's so much information that's shared there, and some of it's infuriating, some of it's inspiring, some of it's a little bit of both. All of it seems like a big hurdle that needs to be jumped. And I think what it really comes down to is that my life mission for everything that I do is to educate other people, because the information just stopping with me, there's only so much that I can do. And I think that other people always have the potential of, being their own activists, even if that's just so much as like paying $7 a month to get lots of information that they can just share with their Facebook friends. Like, it still makes a huge difference. And, the funds for that alliance allow me to continue to spend so much time and effort going to those meetings and working with the FDA and working with the Department of Agriculture. So I think it really just comes down to trying to figure out a way to reach more people with the information that's out there, so that hopefully, even if it's 1 out of every 10,000 people that's like, man, I need to be a part of this, that's still more people that are dedicating their time and energy and specialties to making a difference, and that's what we need.
Where do you find the time? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't believe in time.
You don't believe in time. I like it. I don't sleep.
I think that there's always enough time to do stuff. There's just not always enough energy.
Yeah, okay. That's what I'm lacking. I'm lacking the energy part. But, boy, I mean, attending an AFCO meeting as it is, I mean, I guess it's good sleep while you're there, but, because
it's pretty entertaining, honestly. I mean, the last one that I was at, the oleochemical industry got in a fight with the rendering industry about who gets to use hydrogenated glycerides, which is the unapproved, fairly toxic ingredient that the rendering industry wants to feed their cattle, and the oleochemical industry wants to continue to buy it to make low-quality soaps. So it's horrifying, but entertaining. It's hard to sleep through something like that.
Well, no, I would be entertained, but, for the average person, let's be realistic, your average person or dry kibble, I don't want to be told I'm doing the wrong thing type people. For people like us, it's like, okay, for all of you, you're all wrong, but how do you not just stand up and go, you're wrong, and you're just an idiot and wrong? That would be my thing. So I can't go.
Yeah, occasionally I do, but I try to present it as these are the other facts that you're not considering. But in a lot of cases, it just comes down to trying to find the places where I feel like I can make a difference, and knowing that it's not all going to happen overnight.
You're an adult. That's really what it comes down to. I would just be able. I would say you're an idiot. You know. I've seen different things that go on. I'm like, how is it that people aren't just calling them out? It's, you know, I guess one of the things that really gets under my skin is how they treated Susan Thixton. And that just, it's like, of all the people who had probably the biggest voice who attended those meetings, they wanted to silence her. They didn't want her to say anything, and I felt, in some sense, and I'm gonna be this one person that's gonna go, I felt like they were just sexist towards her. Be quiet, lady. Just sit here and let us talk. Even when I read their little transcript garbage about how the dismissal went on, I look at everything about AFCO, and I find them to be the most vile organization possible. On top of the fact that how much of the terms they actually have trademarked for stupid terms. What is that? There's just so much confusion to it. That's why I
that they've skipped over.
Yes.
You know that they don't actually have a definition for wheat?
No.
It doesn't even exist.
Yeah. Yeah, and they don't need to. That's the thing. They don't need to. Yeah. They say, here's what to do and go for it. And we're telling you it's okay. I don't get it. And
well, those people that are making up AFCO and all of the members and all of the regulatory people, they're the same people that you're saying don't want to be told that they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So, you know, not only are they like the average person of this is what I've always done, and I'm going to feel bad if I'm told that what I've been doing is the wrong thing, but in addition to that, you also have this layer of, but this is my job, and if my job finds out that I'm doing something wrong, that could jeopardize my job. So I think there's a lot of fear that's involved in, so you have to really figure out a way to tell them the truth of things while at the same time empowering them to understand a better alternative and help them get to that point without guilt. And that's really hard.
Yeah, that is the hardest part, because you deal with this as well. It's, especially for I'm still a dry kibble, I don't see anything wrong with it, pet parent. They're not there. And when you try to explain that to them, it's like explaining really a fairy tale. They just don't see it. And sometimes they have to go through the worst case scenario before they go, oh, now I get it. I mean, I know some people that they have a cat that has multiple different symptoms that you can easily pinpoint to dry kibble. And I was like, hey, this is it. Nope. I'm not going to feed anything besides this. Why? It's just too expensive. But you're willing to go on vacations, you're willing to do all these other things, and you're paying how much for vet bills? And these vet bills are costing so much, you know your cat is in agony, and yet, that's okay. I just don't understand. And people in AFCO, they don't care. They're not there to protect you, they're not there to protect me. They're there to protect their wallet. And look at how much money they're pulling in every year, just on their little stupid book alone. It's crazy. Now, as I even told you before, I can go on a complete rampage when it comes to AFCO. PFI is my other favorite one to go through, the Pet Food Institute. I'm sure you've had plenty of interactions with them. I just always love to hear other people who've had great times with Pet Food Institute.
Yeah, that one actually I haven't had a lot of interactions with at this point. So outside of always being surprised at who the members are,
yeah,
what they're recommending, like you can definitely tell by even just looking at the simple information on their website who's funding the whole thing and what their interests are. Obviously, they're not going to be making recommendations for things that oppose their products or pull profits from them. So I think that the biggest thing with them is really continuing to question their truth until they have a more far-reaching and diverse member platform, you know.
Had that discussion with them, asked why is there no veterinarians, no holistic veterinarians, no holistic products out there, why is it? And I was told that's just who the members were selected. I was also told by Mary Young, and she clearly says this, to all of the pet parents out there, don't read the actual ingredients, just trust it.
Lovely.
Yeah, it was great. And of course, since then, she has reached out to other people to have her statement changed, never to me. And she knows how to reach me, but she never will, because she knows she said it. It's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Now,
I've actually heard that it costs as much as $65,000 to become a member.
I would not be surprised. I never asked that question. We didn't ask how much it would cost, but I mean, when you look at it, the names, it's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? You guys are the ones that you're paying for a lobbyist group to lower the bar for you. How can you work on any kind of I can't talk anymore. Any kind of restrictions and any kind of positive outcome when all you're looking at is the dollars? And if we could put this 50-pound bag on the shelves and only spend 50 cents for this bag and charge $15, that's kind of what it all comes down to. And then people are shocked. Oh, cancer is so high, 1 in 2 dogs, which I still think that number is even a bad number. I think it's probably 90-some% of dogs. Not to mention how many cats are dehydrated, dogs are dehydrated. It's muscular problems. I mean, firsthand, it's just like, where do I have to start with this? And you've got people like AFCO, you've got FDA, you've got PFI, you've got Department of Ag. These are people you would think are there to help us. And they're against us. I don't even know.
And I actually have an interesting perspective on that.
Oh, please share.
As I've come to this, even I have been like, I never thought of it like that. So the reality is, AFCO is not a regulatory agency. They don't have any ability to enforce anything. They're not making laws. Same with PFI. But the people in the FDA and the Departments of Agriculture, they don't have enough funding. They don't have enough bodies. They don't have enough resources to be able to actually cover all of the things that they're supposed to cover. So they just kind of end up like, oh, we'll pay attention to this and look like we're doing something. And we'll look at this and look like we're doing something. And meanwhile, they're missing some of the most important things that are out there. And as a result of, them basically going through that since the beginning of time, when somebody like AFCO is created, ultimately what it comes down to is that AFCO decided that by themselves they were going to start doing a job that could benefit the FDA and the Departments of Agriculture and the USDA as well, even though they don't want any part of it. And all of these regulators, they were like, hey, they're doing this job that we don't have to pay them to do. They're self-sustaining, and we can either do this job separately, or we can listen to them, and then we don't have to do it. We don't have to put out our time, our resources, any of our money. It just gets done. So we're going to listen to them. And they've kind of done the same thing with PFI. And I actually think that's super valuable, because the reality is they will never have enough resources to cover everything. But being that they are the regulators, they should also be the ones that demand standards within each one of those. Right. The FDA, the USDA, the Departments of Agriculture, they really should be saying, PFI, if you want us to listen to you and actually value anything that you have to say, then you're going to have to diversify your members. ASCO, same thing. You guys are going to have to diversify your members and your topics, and they shouldn't just go and say, well, what information do you have for us? They should say, these are the things that are important for us. You need to provide us with information from a variety of credible sources in order for us to actually listen to you. So I think that if consumers really pushed them to do that, then those organizations have the potential to be life-saving for what the values of the FDA and the USDA and the Departments of Agriculture are, because right now they're just so in over their heads because they have too many things to focus on.
I can definitely agree. I would like to see diversification from all of it, because honestly, it's kind of weird. It's nobody recognizes biologically appropriate. Nobody, and one thing we'll get into is the whole vegan idea or plant-based diet, even though there's definitely a lot of question marks. But, the fact is that it's all or nothing. It's dry kibble or it's nothing. And that's really even now, and that's what I'm still trying to, scratch my head. When is this going to change? What has to happen before people are like, oh crap, yeah, we're going to, we've seen all the facts, we've seen the light, it's time. We're awake. I don't know when it's going to happen. That's what shocks me.
Well, what I just presented to the FDA, basically stemming from the risk assessment project, is that they have never really considered the fact that the FDA's purpose in its origins is to make food products as a whole safer and healthier for the public. Like, that's their mission, that's their goal. And if you really look at the categories of the industry, you have the canned foods, the kibble foods, dehydrated foods, raw foods, high-pressure pasteurized foods. So you have these different categories. And if you look at which one of those categories aligns with FDA values of providing the safest, healthiest products, look at kibble. They're buying trash and cooking it so that hopefully the trash is safe because you cooked it so much. Hopefully there's not a huge problem, versus raw foods that are always under fire. I mean, it's like literal witch hunts every couple of years seeking pathogens that they can't find. And these companies, for them to continue to actually be allowed to sell their products and not go out of business because they got in trouble, they have to buy the cleanest, healthiest meats, fruits, vegetables. Not only do they have to source them that way, but once they get them, they have to actually manufacture them that well. Their quality control has to be immaculate. Their shipping has to be immaculate, so that it's still basically the FDA standards by the time that it gets to the consumer. It's still cleanest. It's still healthiest. So the raw food sector aligns most appropriately with the FDA values, and I don't think that that's something that's ever been presented to them before, and hopefully they'll actually take that into consideration and reassess that they're spending a whole lot of money and time trying to track down reasons for recalls when they wouldn't have to do that if they weren't the ones promoting and advertising that people should buy the one type of product that opposes their values the most, which is kibble.
Right. And I read that that entire list that you gave me, your FDA review, and I was like, I sat back, I was at the shop, and you were like, here, I'm going to send you this, and you sent me, and I was just sitting here just going, again, back to what I originally said, man, you sent the best bio I've ever seen in my life. And then when you sent me this, you're like, hey, I haven't actually finished this, and I was like, I hope I sent your response back. I thought I did. I hope I did. It was going to say, oh my gosh, I didn't get up. I read the entire thing. My jaw hit the ground, and I'm just like, and yet you think you know it all. But I was like, oh, I mean, it shocked me. I was like, oh my God. I really had nothing to say besides, oh my gosh. And, the way you present everything is, and the highest compliment I can give is, you are a Susan Thixton. And yet, I mean, I think Susan, no. I think Susan's amazing, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm kind of going, you are the next Susan Thixton. You are just, wow. It was just one of those, I could not believe it. I mean, I just kept reading it going, wow, if only everybody could understand this, or people would take the time to read it. It's just, I think that's probably the best way of putting it, though. If people would just read it, they would understand just really what's going on. I mean, you pull the curtain back. It's like, here it is. And I just was like, oh my gosh.
Well, thank you.
No, I mean, thank you for saying it to me, because I was like, oh my gosh, it made my day, because I was just like, I'm going to read this, and then I consume it, and I think I read it 2 or 3 times throughout the day, and I was going, oh my gosh. Even when I think I know things, and I'm like, yeah. You actually know, you actually have an abundance of knowledge, and it's like, I don't even know where to start. Even starting our conversation today, it's like, where do we even start? You go so far, and I'm like, you're hands-on with AFCO, you're hands-on when it comes to Department of Ag. Mine is from this perspective and reading, so it's I don't have that personalized like you do. That's where our differences are, and I'm like, I don't even know where to go. She's just beyond any of it. So, it's just like, sometimes I'm kind of sitting here going, I don't even know where to go. Where's my rebuttal going to come from this one? Because you're dead on. And it's just like, wow.
And if you look at the references on those, it's all FDA and CDC references. So again, like, really looking at the information that they themselves are providing is the way to truth, and it's really inarguable for them, which makes it like such a relief to provide it to them.
Well, your claim was substantiated with data provided by them, so it's kind of one of those, look, here's what it is, and here's what you've seen, and it's right there, and yet, Now, is that available for anybody to actually read anywhere, or was that just sent to me? That I got to see it early.
Yeah, it's not completely available yet, because the whole project isn't done. There are pieces of it that I put onto my Food Regulation Facts Alliance page, and I've sent summaries of it to the members, and there will be more information available as I continue through to completion.
Okay, well, that's why I'm kind of being a little, careful on how I word everything. So I'm like, I don't think everything's published yet, so that's why I was like, okay. But as soon as it comes available, I will share it, because it was just, I'll share it from you and stuff, because it's just amazing. That was just absolutely.
And I'm happy to share the ranking of the statistics for safety, if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I'll share anything you want me to share. I'll share it. I want to be very careful on what I actually put out there, because it's just it's just amazing. It was just like, wow, where do I even go?
I appreciate it. So the main statistics that I think are the most fascinating is that based on market share, like which category of food takes up what percentage of the industry, and then also the recall data for 2007 through to now, 2017. If you combine those, then what it shows is that The safest products to feed are dehydrated, freeze-dried, and air-dried, non-high pressure pasteurized. You're 664 times less likely to have a recall on those products than you are on kibble. You're 62 times less likely to have a recall on frozen raw, non-HPP than kibble. You're 60 times less likely to have a recall on HPP freeze-dried products. And then kibble is the baseline. And then high-pressure pasteurized frozen raws like Stella and Chewy's, Instinct, Primal, Stewart's, Ragcat, those ones, you're 1.5 times more likely to have a recall than kibble. And then canned foods, you're 8 times more likely to have a recall.
And what shocked me is that, I mean, yes, I understand recalls do happen, and I understand that even good companies like your Ragcat and your Primal, it's going to happen. I mean, Darwin's pulled back some stuff as well. It's going to happen, but it's still, the safety net is there. And you pretty much have layered out the actual math to it. And that's the other part that I don't know with your common pet parent, how much of it is understood. And that's the hard part that I have with people, and I know you do too, where you try to, put it into layman's terms, but it is hard. It is very hard to really articulate that. It's like, if you don't feed this, if you feed this, you're going to have this problem. If you don't feed this and you feed this, you'll have this positive. It's a math equation that we have almost daily. You're probably better at it than I am. I have not mastered it at all. I don't know how to master it, to be honest with you. I've tried.
Well, and recalls definitely aren't the be-all, end-all of whether or not you have a good product. Like, Honest Kitchen is an amazing company, and they had a recall, but they recalled because salmonella was found on the drain at their parsley supplier. So not ever in the food, it was on a drain. And they were like, well, better safe than sorry. And so they recalled. But then you have other companies, like think of the melamine recall. All of those ones, there were more than 100,000 deaths associated with that.
Right.
And all of those companies were like, well, I guess we have to. So it really comes down to company ethics and their sourcing and their quality control, and there's just a lot of different factors to whether or not you're buying a good quality product.
And you know what? I still like to make it myself, because at least I know there's a little bit less of a chance. At least if I know I'm using a human grade, I'm probably better off. And that's just my take on it. It's, I know a lot of people like to use they'll go to different companies and they'll order different things. I just try to source everything myself. And yet it's hard, because I don't really go down the meat aisle for me. I go down it for my dog, which is funny. It's the hardest thing ever. I mean, you just go, I'm sure you go through this, but I go, I hope this cow or this pig or whatever, I hope they didn't have a rough time, because I feel very guilty if that's the case. And it's like, oh, I wouldn't eat it myself, but my dog has to eat it, so I'm stuck.
Yeah, and I actually would never make my own, because I don't have the time to identify those details. So I only buy from companies that are really transparent about those kinds of details. So, for example, Answers, the company that Billy is with, I know for a fact that company is not only humanely treating their animals in life, but also at death. I don't know if he had shared, but even at the time of slaughter, they are using essential oil diffusers and carbon dioxide so that they pass out and you're not getting adrenaline pumping through their system. They're never grain finished. They're always grass-fed. Everything about that company is immaculate. And unless I quit what I do for a living, then I don't have the time to basically meet the same quality standards that they have. So I'm super picky about the companies that I'll use, but I don't believe that I would ever be capable of doing as good of a job as some of them.
And that's true. It is true. I mean, we were talking about it, and we mentioned, he said when he would go out to the farm, he'll come back with, I think he said like 50 pounds of pork or something. He's like, I probably wouldn't buy it in stores, but I know exactly how this whole thing went in process, so I feel comfortable. I'm like, in that circumstance, I might be okay to actually eat it. And I look at my daughter. She loves Teen Titans Go, and she relates to Beast Boy, and she's always like, I'm a vegetarian. But I'm like, how are you vegetarian when you eat meat? She always likes to tell people, I'm a vegetarian. I'm like, she's really not. I'm a vegetarian, she's not. But one day I have a feeling she might be, because she's going to be like, we do what to animals? No. Yeah, our kids are becoming life images of us. You maybe would be a good thing. I don't know about for me. I don't know if I'm the exact role model I want my daughter to be like, but now we've gone into the FDA and everything, and I wanted to actually touch briefly on plant-based, because I remember we had our discussion before we started, and it's just such a topic that I just can't stop having. Plant-based diet for dogs, cats, which I'm a little skeptical. I don't understand how cats is even possible. But it's been known to be done with dogs mostly, and I really want somebody who has the wherewithal as you have, and your take on this whole movement, and, where are we going with it?
Yeah. So I think first it's important to address why it's not species appropriate for them, and then I'll share why I think what I do about the options for if you're going to do it anyways. First off, if you look at a dog or a cat system, they have sharp teeth for cutting meat. They don't have digestive enzymes in their mouths. They have enzymes for killing pathogens, which obviously opposes humans. They have really big necks because it takes a lot of muscle to chew through meat, unlike humans who have these little tiny necks because we don't have to work really hard to chew fruits and vegetables. They have huge stomachs, so if you were to eat 20% of your body weight, then it would probably kill you, but dogs tend to do it pretty regularly. I think everybody knows somebody whose dog at some point got into the pantry and ate half a bag of kibble. It didn't kill them. So they have huge stomachs. They have super short intestines. Cats don't have a cecum at all, which is for fermenting starches, breaking them down, helping with absorption. Dogs have a super tiny one. So humans on the other side, we have small stomachs, very long intestines. We're supposed to have things sitting in our intestines long enough to be able to absorb the nutrients. For dogs, it's really just like a trash chute. If you were to have a dog that had really long intestines or a cat, the meats, they could harbor pathogens in their guts like it does in humans. That's why pathogens are more dangerous for humans than they are for dogs and cats. Also, the pH in their stomach is really, really low, very acidic for killing pathogens. The metabolic pathways, especially in cats, the reason that they have a high need for certain amino acids like taurine is because the way that their metabolic pathways work is completely alien compared to a person's. So they're designed to transfer proteins into glucose, which we can't do. And if you try to alter that, their body doesn't have the ability to change that. So normally what happens is they'll get what's called muscle wasting, where their body eats itself to survive because they can't pull the nutrients from the non-meat proteins. So if you're looking at it from that stance, I think that if you ethically feel like you just don't want to feed an animal that might have been mistreated and you want the best health for your pet, the best thing that you can do is buy from a company like Answers, where you know that you're getting a humanely raised animal. You know, they're really into health and wellness, and their focus is to make sure that you're getting the best quality humane product that's available. So I think in alignment with like the ethical standards, I think they're probably the best company. But then if you just are like, I just don't want to ever contribute to the death of an animal no matter what, then I think the best option is still not to feed kibble, but there's a company called Carna4, it's the number 4, and they actually make sprouted grain and sprouted lentil products. So they have a kibble, but I think even better is to not provide the carcinogens that happen when you cook things and just do the powder. So when you have a sprouted product, you're actually getting rid of the anti-nutrients and basically changing this high protein thing that's difficult on digestion and potentially causes diseases into a high protein thing that's digested like a plant. So you can take something like that, their powder blend, and you can mix it into a different base of, you know, fruits and vegetables or, you know, whatever other base that you want to do. But it's still a vegan option. I think it's the best alternative. I personally would never do a vegan grain, kibble product, just because, again, you're still dehydrating them. You're still giving them carcinogens with every meal because you're cooking the product. You still have to add synthetics. I'm not sure if people are aware what synthetics are made out of, but like D-L-methionine is actually sourced from genetically modified E. coli. Sodium selenite is a form of selenium in almost every dog and cat food that has synthetics. The MSGS report says that's 109 times more toxic than arsenic. So you don't want to do those if you don't have to. So still try to do whole food nutrition in the form of some kind of sprouted lentils or grains instead if you're just really set on doing vegan.
Well said. My gosh, well said. You know, I always make this kind of reference. I'm the first listener to every episode, and I'm just kind of going, and what next? I don't even know. You're so on it that I just don't even know where to go with it, because it's like, yeah, that's there's nothing I can really add that's going to have any quality. That's amazing. In our last minutes, now you mentioned you actually have Heroes Pets. You have Essential Provisions. What else have we not covered? Because, I mean, again, I'm just enjoying sitting here listening to all of your knowledge.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so Heroes Pets, heroespets.com, that's my retail store, the brick and mortar store in Littleton. And then I have Elemental Provisions, which is an herb and homeopathy company, and I customize a lot of blends, but I sell them primarily through Heroes. And then the Food Regulation Facts Alliance. And then I also have a Patreon page, and it's patreon.com/sacredyoutoday. And that one is actually just less pet-oriented. Pet things still come up, but it's just about health and well-being for whatever topic seems interesting to me at the time, honestly, which there's a lot of them.
I like that, because I can completely imagine that there's probably a topic every day that just catches your attention. You just stick to it throughout the whole time. I can see that. See, unfortunately, me, it's just really always pet. I try to eliminate anything else. I want to eliminate the social currency that's out there because it's garbage. Politics, I'm just going to avoid completely. And I just kind of focus in this realm because, well, you know, it's at least making a difference. I don't think that the other stuff is. So I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to stay here. But you probably just spend your entire day reading different things and consuming and coming up with your own terminology to it. It's just been
I work
absolutely...
so much with the public that so many times I'll be working with somebody about a problem with their pet, and then a problem with their own health comes up, or something that relates to what would benefit them, and then I have those tangents too.
Well, I mean, nutrition for an animal and nutrition for a human, there are a little bit of similarities. Fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, fresh whatever you want to have, instead of your fried stuff. I mean, it can really easily kind of cook, they're copacetic. But, gosh, it's been an absolute pleasure. And please don't be a stranger. Come back anytime. I've absolutely just enjoyed having this conversation with you. I'm so sad that my unfortunate podcast only allows so many minutes, because I probably would do this for another 2, 3, 4 hours, and I could go on forever.
I'm happy to go on forever as well, so I'd be happy to come back.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Anything else on our last minutes that you wanted to add?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, so as we leave
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Well, I'm Chris Green. That's this episode for this week. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, gotta go in my bedtime. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, leave a like on iTunes or YouTube, or leave a comment.